Hello all, welcome back to my channel. We'll start off with the loops here, where we'll try to solve each and every problem in both the for loop as well as the while loop. So we are going to solve three problems here, and then going forward, we're going to have a series of tutorial where we'll be covering not just loops, but we'll also be covering the if conditions, if else, and the functions and strings as well. So let's get started with this exercise, and gradually we shall also be increasing our difficulty level of these problems. And I'm sure you're going to really learn a lot during these exercises because the complexity level is gradually going to increase. Let's get started. All right. The first problem, print numbers from 1 to 20 with an increment of 3 using for loop. So if you have to print numbers from 1 to 20, what do we do? If we just type 1 to 20 here and I execute the run command here, we have all the numbers getting executed here. But what do we want here? We want with an increment of 3. So, and also we have to use a for loop. So if we use a for loop here, for I in 1 to 20, and we want to print I here. Correct? Now, if we do this, let me execute this. So we have all the numbers getting printed from 1 to 20. Now we have to put the conditions. The condition here is with an increment of 3. So we cannot just print I here. So we have to print every number with an increment. So even when we are reading the range in the for loop, we have to ensure that it reads only something like this. For I in, it should be like something like this: 1 4 7. Let me just do this manually, and then we shall try to do a simpler way of solving this problem. 13 16 and 19. All right, now I am calling each one of them, and I have to also close the bracket here. So now it works fine. Now if I execute this for loop, it is printing each number with an increment: 1 4 7 10 13 16 and 19. Now, if you want this similar increment, it will be tedious for us, right, to type. Now, what if we want an increment of 3, but the numbers ranging from 1 to say 100? Then we cannot keep typing so many numbers. So, I hope you still remember that we had used a sequence operator, SEQ. And inside sequence, we start off with number 1, and then we go up to number 20, and with an increment. So for by, we'll be using 3. Now, if we just execute the for loop here, we get exactly the same thing: 1 4 7 10 13 16 19. So this is how we execute a for loop with an increment of 3. Now, if we have to do it with a while loop here, while I, so let us just define or assign the value of I as 1, and then while I less than equal to 20, we continue to print I, right? Print I, and we have to increase the number of I by 3. So first it assigns a value of 1, and then 1 is less than equal to 20, so it prints 1. Then I now becomes I plus 3, which is 1 plus 3, which is 4. Again, the while loop gets executed. 4 less than equal to 20, yes, so it prints 4. Then it becomes 7. 7 less than equal to 20, yes, so print 7. Then I becomes 10, and so on and so forth. So if we execute the while loop here, it gives us exactly the same results: 1 4 7 10 13 16 and 19. All right, now let's move to the next problem. From 1 to 100, print only those numbers that are divisible by 7, right? So if I do something like for I in 1 to 100, and then print I. So this is the first step that we are going to execute. It will print all the way up to 100. But now print only those numbers that are divisible by 7. So we have an option here. uh, of putting the sequence once again. But rather than putting a sequence here, I would suggest let's try to use a if condition here. So let's say if I divisible by 7, which means I percentage 7 equal to 0, then it should be print I. And if it is not, then it should just say next. All right, it should not print the numbers at all. Now if I execute this, let me bring this curly braces above. All right, and now if I execute this for loop here, it now just prints all the numbers that are divisible by 7, 7, 14, 21, 28, all the way up to 100. Now something similar we can do in while loop as well. So if we have to do it in the while loop, while I less than equal to 100, by now you must be feeling comfortable with the loops. I equal to, let's assign the value to be 7 first. Why go for 1? Let's just assign it as 7 straight away. And then print I. But before printing I, we have to put the condition here. So if condition will remain exactly as it is. So just copy and paste. Though I know I'm taking a risk of doing a copy paste because I've already experienced that before. But I'm sure this time I am not going to make any mistake with the if condition or with the copy paste. So while I is less than equal to 100, print I, else next. But here I just have to increment the value of I by 7. All right, now I think I have done it perfectly. All right, now if I just execute the line here, assigning or initializing the value of I to be 7 and then running the while loop here. Once I execute it, once again managed to escape from the copy paste curse. So 7, 14, 21, 28 and all the way up to less than 100. All right, now coming to the last problem, print the below numbers in the same pattern using loops. So what do we see here? We see that the number starts with 1, it gets printed, and then prints 1 and 2, then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one number gradually increases and it goes all the way up to 9. So which means we have 9 rows and the maximum number of columns is 9 in the last row. So how do we do this? So what we have to do is we have to call numbers all the way from 1 to 9. But when we're doing this, we just have to print one number and gradually have to keep increasing the number of numbers to be printed as we proceed through the next loop. So if we call up another loop, in fact, we don't have to call another loop here. All that we need to do is assign another variable j, and this variable j will be running all the way from 1 to I. So here what we are saying is when we assign the value of I as 1, j will be having numbers 1 to 1, which means just one number. And then we print that number. Right? Now, the next time we run through this for loop, j will now have the values from 1 to, since now the value of I is 2, so j will be having numbers all the way from 1 to 2. And then it will print 1 and 2 next to each other. And then again it runs the for loop, and now I has the value 3, so j is 1 to 3, so it prints 1 2 3. So if I execute this for loop here, there you are. So it prints the number 1 first, then 1 and 2, then 1 2 and 3, and gradually all the way up to 9. So that's how we can execute this pattern using a for loop here. So if you probably have tried it on your own, sometimes we might be tempted to use two for loops here, a nested for loop, but that is not required here. We can use just a single for loop and execute this. So this was all about these executions of loops in R. Now let's try to do the same thing in Python. Print numbers from 1 to 20 with an increment of 3 using what? using for loops. Okay, I forgot to paste it here, but nevertheless, for loop. So let's say, okay, for loop. So if I have to print all the numbers from 1 to 20 for I in, now in the range function, we have an option of also using the step function, which I have not explained in the tutorial, but this is how it can also be done. So if you don't put the step function, by default, the increment will be just 1. So if I put I 1 to 20, and if I just print I, all the numbers right from 1 to 20 get printed. I mean, of course, the last number will not get printed, typical nature of Python. So all the numbers up to the last number will get printed. And now if I just want with an increment of 3, all that I have to do is pass 3 here. So it reads the first number, it gets printed as 1. Then while it again comes back to the for loop, it sees that we have to increment by 3. So the next number that will now be read is 1 plus 3, which is 4. And then 4 will get printed. And then once again it executes. So after 4, the next will be 4 plus 3, so 7. And 7 gets printed. So if I execute this for loop, 1, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, and 19. So after it reaches 19, once it again comes back to the loop, so now 19 plus 3, so it's anyway beyond the for loop. So it will not execute once the value exceeds 20. So this is how we execute in a for loop. And in the case of a while loop, it's very similar. If I just type or initialize the value of I as 1, and then while I is less than equal to 20, I just have to print I here and increase the value of I by 3. And now once I execute this, it will again give me the same set of numbers, 1 to 19 with an increment of 3. All right. The next problem. From 1 to 100, print only those numbers that are divisible by 7. So here we are going to use a for loop first. For I in range 1 to 100, and then when we are checking the value of I, in fact here we can start off with 7, because anyway we know that 1 is not divisible by 7. All the numbers up to 6 are not divisible by 7. And now here, if we just ask this question, if I percentage 7 equal to 0, then just print I, else pass. Don't do anything. And once we execute this, we have all the numbers up to 100 divisible by 7. I would encourage you to try creating a while loop for this particular problem on your own. Do post in your comment section if you get stuck somewhere and if you are not able to execute that. All right. Now coming to the last problem, print the below numbers in the same pattern using loops. So just like we did here, we have to use a for loop. For I in range, we have all the way up to 9. But since in Python, the last number does not get printed, we have to go up to 10. And now what do we want? If I just print I here, I will just get printed from 1 to 10, from 1 to 9. But that's not what I want, right? So I need to have j equal to 1 to, what shall we putting here? I plus 1, because if we apply the same concept here, same technique here, like we used in R, where is that? Yeah. So here in R, it also prints the last number, whereas in Python, the last number will not get printed. So we have to use I plus 1. What else can we do here? We have to keep it in the range. In fact, range 1 and I plus 1, right? And we are going to print j here. We'll be printing j 1 by 1. But this would not give us the format that we're looking for. Let me execute this first and then we shall try to rectify this. Now once I execute this, if you see here, range does not get read properly. So we have to convert this in the form of a list. So if I convert this in the form of a list and now execute this, we have all these numbers 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 9. So this is how we can get the numbers printed using a for loop. So this is the best that we can get with a single for loop in Python. But if we want to get in exact format as we got in R, wherein we don't want these square brackets, then we should go with a nested for loop. So if I want to ensure that I just print the numbers, no comma here, because we are also getting comma here and there are no commas here. So if I have to get exact format, then we'll have to run a nested for loop. So it will be like this: for I in range 1 to 10, and the next for loop, which is the nested one within the for loop here, would be for j in range. Now j will also be printing from 1, but it will go only up to I plus 1. So when we read 1, it says 1 to 1 plus 1, which is 2. So 1 to 2, it will only print 1 here. Now when I is 2, then this range for j will be from 1 to 2 plus 1, which is 3. So the range is 1 to 3. So only 1 and 2 will get printed. The third number will not get printed. Maybe once I print j, things will be easy. But once again, even if I just print j here, that will not be the final result. We'll have to do a little more adjustments. Let me execute this first. So here, if you see, all the numbers are getting messed up here. In print, we have an option here. If I click on shift and tab, it says end equal to /n, which means as soon as you print one number, by default, the next number will get printed in the new line. So /n means new line. So we have an option of changing this end here. So if I say end equal to an empty space, and now if I execute this, it will still not give us the exact pattern, but let us execute this first and then see what else we need to do. Now once I execute this line, it is now printing everything next to each other, right? So what more we need to do? We are somewhere close to the final pattern that we are looking for, but there is still minor change that we need to incorporate. So what is that? So what we want is, once this loop, the inner loop, is complete, it has to create a space so that the next iteration is printed, and then once again new line, so another space, and the next iteration and another new line, and then the next iteration. So that's how we want it to do. So what we have to do is, once this iteration, the inner for loop, is completely iterated, we want to print an empty line, and we can do that using an empty print statement. So now if I execute this, this is exactly how we want it. 1, so it prints 1 first, and then now the value of I is 2, so 1 2 2 plus 1, that is 3. So it will just take 1 and 2 there, and then it will print. First it will print 1, then end is space, so it will create a space here, and then again iterating, it will capture 2 as the next value, it will print that, and then this for loop is completely executed. It comes out of the for loop, it sees a print statement, blank print statement, it will go to the next line, and then completely come out and go to the outer for loop. Now the next value of I is 3. It again goes back to the inner for loop. So here j will be ranging from 1 to 3 plus 1, which is 4. So 1 to 4, which means it will only print 1, 2, and 3, and all these 3 numbers with a space. So that's how 1 space 2 space 3 gets printed, and then once it comes out, again a new line, and then it will be up to 4, then 5, and so on and so forth till we reach the last number, which is 9 here. And that's how this for loop gets iterated. But however, in some cases, if this is also fine with us, even if it has a list operator, we can incorporate that using a single for loop. But if we want an exact pattern, then we might have to use a nested for loop here. All right, I hope you found this tutorial useful. From the next tutorial onwards, we'll slightly increase the complexity of the use case, and definitely we'll get to learn a lot more. And we'll also start introducing functions and other things that we've learned so far. All right. I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you're liking my tutorial, please do subscribe to my channel. If you have any questions, suggestions, feedback, please do post them in the comment section. See you in the next tutorial. Thank you very much.